And hello, welcome back to our show. Today I'm talking about pillar number 2. As you know, we've been on the quest to reverse diabetes, and we've been talking about the pillars, right? Remember, there are 3 of them. Last week we covered reducing your insulin. This week we're talking about suppressing the appetite. That big part of our journey that seems like it is the most difficult one to conquer. It seems like it's the one that pushes through everything else. It seems like it's the one that we have absolutely no control over. We're going to be spending some time tonight talking about that. What are the things that make it challenging to suppress the appetite? And then what are some things we can do to be able to be successful? Hey, if you're new to me, I'm Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, new year, new you, I'm talking to adults with type 2 diabetes who want to put their diabetes in remission, who want to get off of diabetes medications, who in fact want to reverse their diabetes. That's who we're talking about. New year, new you. I welcome you. Also, if you're new, go ahead and put new in the comments because we'd love to give you a hand clap. And some music to let you know that you are welcomed in the space. And if you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the comments as well. Make sure you put a Q in front of them because we'd love to get to them as we get into the evening. Yeah. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing, y'all. And as you know, as I do on I've got my monitors that we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. All right, so I've got those over here. I've got my Keto Mojo and my Contour. And then right below, you'll see my Dexcom Clarity report, which we'll take a look at here in just a minute as we get into the rest of the show and into the evening. But tonight we're talking about the pillars, right? Pillars. Pillar number 2 is what we're dealing with. That is suppressing the appetite, decreasing insulin, suppressing the appetite, and then of course reduce sugar. And those are the pillars. Those are the pillars that we use. And tonight we're going to be talking about at least one of them. All right. So if you've not already done so, go ahead and make sure that you get back to our show from last week, where we actually talked about the pillars and or talked about the pillars in general, and then we went into pillar number 1. You want to make sure that you watch that, and then come on back. Well, don't leave now. Right? Watch that after the show, and then come on back, and we'll continue working through that. Now, this description or this show that we're doing tonight has a lot of components. So what we may end up doing is actually come back and do a part 2. Right? Because of the things that we do, of the things that we need to do, suppressing the appetite seems to be the one where most people will have challenges. And so we're going to spend some time going through that tonight. And then, like I said, we'll probably come back and do a part 2 and maybe even a part 3. But hey, we'll see where that goes. And just some shout outs to see Teresa's out there. Hey, Teresa. She says, hey, doctor and everyone. Teresa, glad that you're there. If you are out there right now and you don't see someone that you invited, go ahead and let them know that we are here in the space and that we want to make sure that they are here and that they are able to do and be part of us. Now, a couple of things, a couple of housekeeping things. We are currently not streaming to Twitter or X, and we're currently not streaming to Instagram. And that's because both of those have, Twitter recently has changed some of what they do and how they do it. And then, of course, Instagram is a little interesting in the way it did it. And we did that for a while. And so right now we are not doing that. So all the other platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Facebook groups, you can still see us there and be part of what we do. Okay, awesome. And then Teresa is saying, I remember to hit and like the like button. Yes, definitely. Okay, so let's hop over and let's go ahead and let's take a look at some numbers, right? I want to make sure that we are able to do that. Let me do one thing and get my monitor back up. See if we get that to pull. There we are. All right. So first, I want to take a look at my. I want to take a look at what my are showing. So let's pop over and take a look at that. And you see there right now that my Libre is saying that my blood sugar is 97, and you'll see that right there above, right next to my head. And if we look at the graph that's down below, you'll see that for most of today, it's either been straddling right about 150, and then as the day went on and down and came down, down to 97, which is what it is right now. And just to give you some perspective, right now, so I started fasting last night. Well, that's an interesting story. So last night, my plan was to start fasting at 5 o'clock, which I said, okay, I fasted at 5 o'clock. And then I'm sitting watching movies with my son, right? We're watching, he just discovered Back to the Future. So we watched the first one, then we watched the second one, and we're getting late into evening and close to the end. And I like automatically got up and went to the kitchen and got something and ate it. And my brain didn't say to me, hey, wait a minute, you're fasting. So this was about maybe 11 o'clock. So I had started fasting at 5. So now we were 6 hours in, so 11 o'clock. So anyway, so I restarted the fast last night, and officially I'm saying I started the fast at midnight. So midnight from last night to 12 today, that would give us 12 hours. And then, so right now we're about 19 hours total, okay? And so that just goes to show that, right, that thing that happens, remember the heat model, we automatically do things. Anyway, so that's my Libre, and then if I take a look at my Dexcom, you'll see that says 113. And then let's go ahead and take a look at what my other monitors are saying. So I've got the Keto Mojo, and then I've got the Contour. So let's go ahead and do that. And while I do that, I do see another one of our community members, Steve. Hey man, how are you? Steve says hello. Actually, let me get this in Contour. Get that one in there. And let me go ahead and I'm going to pop Steve's question on right there across this one. There you go. See, Steve, you get a special space right there across the monitors. All right. And then, so the Keto Mojo gives me both a blood sugar and ketones. So let's go ahead and we're going to start out with the blood sugar. See what that is. And if you think you know what my ketones are, go ahead and pop those in. All right, and then let's get one of these trusty. Oh, and I've been telling you guys that these guys come in different colors. So these are the test strips. Or not test strip, but the lancets. So here's one that is white with a purple top, and that's the one that we've been using. And then here is one that's purple with a white top. So let's go ahead and use the purple with the white top because we've been using the other ones so far. So let's go ahead and grab that out. And once again, this is a spring-loaded one. You hit the little lever, and then the lancet comes out. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make sure I'm going to actually use a different finger tonight. Okay, so you should have heard that little click. And there is our little drop of blood. That's my Keto Mojo. We get the blood sugar going. Here's my Contour. Blood sugar going there as well. So 112 for the Keto Mojo. On the screen also you see the Dexcom. That's 113. The the Contour says 100. And then if you recall, this guy, which is the Libre, says 97 right now. So let's go ahead and I'm going to get the strip out for the Keto Mojo, and we're going to put in a strip for the ketones. And so the brown strips are for blood sugar, and then the blue strip for ketones. Let's go ahead and get that started. Okay, so what do you think my ketones are going to be after 19 hours? 19 hours of fasting. Of course, I'm not going to show it to you right now because we're going to hop over and we're going to do Something else. There we go. All right. So let's get to our discussion. Let's get to our discussion. And so reversing diabetes, which is what we're doing, reversing diabetes is the process, right? So new year, new you. New year, new you. And we're working in that direction. And the pillars of reversing diabetes, as we've talked about, number one, decrease insulin. Number two, suppress appetite. And then number three, reduce sugar. And last week, we spent our time talking about decreasing insulin. So we had a good discussion. Make sure, like I said, you go back and you take a look at that. And so tonight, we're talking about number two, which is suppressing the appetite. Suppressing the appetite. I can't tell you the number of people, and if you agree with this, put a yes. The number of people who say to me that I can't control my blood sugar, I can't control my weight, I can't control whatever it is they're trying to control metabolically because I love to eat such and such. I love to drink this. I can't stay on a diet. I can't, right? So there are all these things that are related to appetite, related to food. And we've talked a little bit, we've talked not just a little bit, but a lot about our heat model, those things that push us, those triggers. And so if you agree with the fact or with the statement that many people don't succeed in their metabolic disease because of appetite, I want you to put yes in the comments. Okay, put yes in the comments, because that is the place where often people will find that they have issues for whatever reason. I had a lady who came to see me in the office, and this was back I should say maybe, it wasn't right before Easter. And so she said to me that, hey, Dr. Woode, I'm going to have some trouble. I'm going to have a problem because Easter's coming. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, Easter's coming and there are these candies that I love to eat. So notice, all throughout the year, she seemed to indicate that she does fine. But Easter was coming, and the Easter candy, right, she just loved it. And so that would cause her problems. And many of you kind of go through your week, go through your months, go through the year, and there's this thing that happens, right, whatever holiday it is. We just passed holidays. And so you may come up and you come to Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's or a birthday or an anniversary. And the thing that often will push us off of our plan, push us off of the meal plan, push us off of the diet, if you will, has to do with appetite. And so if for some reason or if somehow we're able to suppress the appetite, then there would be a lot of success. But it's just that thing in our head, in our mind, that pushes us in that direction. So tonight we're going to talk about pillar number 2, suppressing the appetite. And often the foods that we have cause something in us. It is the memory. It is the position that it puts us in. It's the calm. You've heard me say that about our heat model. But that is what the food does for us. And the manufacturers have done a great job of putting it together so that you put it in your mouth and you say, I can't just eat one. I can't just eat one. I got to eat more, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Okay? Even as I sometimes will manage the things that I eat post-fast, and I've gone to eating peanut butter, right? Those of you who are in the community, you know what that means, right? So peanut butter. So I don't go get the cashews and I'll get the almonds, but I got peanut butter in there. And I'll go get a scoop of peanut butter because I said, okay, peanut butter good, better, right? I don't eat the whole thing, but I'll get that first one. And then once I get the first one, I'm going to get, okay, 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and that's right, and then 6. And it's not sometimes until I get to that 6th spoon of peanut butter that my brain says, hey, wait, what's going on? And it's not a hunger thing, right? It is the appetite. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what really is appetite? What is appetite? So appetite is the natural desire to eat. So it is a natural desire to eat. And this is to be differentiated from hunger, right? So appetite is the natural desire to eat. And this is to be differentiated from hunger because hunger is a physiologic need for food. Hunger says that, or my body says, I need energy. I need food. I want you to see the difference. So hunger is a physiologic, and we'll come back and we'll break down a little bit of that here in a minute. But as we're trying to understand what we need to do, or how we suppress, how do we suppress the appetite, we've got to understand a little bit about hunger and appetite, what they mean, what they do, and how they roll, okay? So hunger is a basic physiologic need for food. The body says, I need energy. I gotta have it. And appetite is simply appetite is a desire, a natural desire for food. Now notice that the desire comes from where? The desire is a brain thing, and hunger is a physiologic body thing, right? Notice the difference. So hunger is a natural, or is a body thing, a physiologic, and then appetite is a brain. Okay, so when we talk about appetite, the appetite, the stimulation of the appetite, often accompanied by physical sensations. Physical sensations. So we'll hear the stomach growling. Sometimes we'll have. Sometimes people will say they feel a headache. They have some indigestion. They have burning in the stomach, right? So all those things, they feel weak. Now, because our bodies are used to having a certain level of blood sugar, because our stomachs are used to being full, when the stomach is not full, then the stomach begins growling, and we associate that with hunger, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And so appetite really is an interplay of psychological, physical, and environmental factors. Notice that. So environmental, physical, and psychological factors. And appetite includes the emotional and the sensory aspects of eating. That is, cravings and enjoyment. Hunger, when we get to it, you'll see, hunger really doesn't care whether you enjoy the food. Hunger doesn't care what the food feels like or tastes like, how soft it is, how hard it is. But appetite does. Because appetite says, man, you remember that time when we went to that place and we had that thing and we felt this way? And you remember how, hey, have I ever told you about my experience with juice? All right. Have I ever told you the experience with juice? Look, when I, and I bet you if I do it right now, same thing, right? I lost my mind. So when I drink juice and soda, let's start with soda because that's an easy one to understand. When I drink soda, when those bubbles hit the back of my throat and I get that burn, I get that sensation, it's like there's this calm that comes over me. And I will keep drinking until I get the burn. And as long as the burn doesn't come, I keep drinking. When I drink juice, I remember a friend of mine was over and he was sitting in the kitchen. And I got up and I went to the refrigerator and got some juice, poured it in a glass, and I was on my way back and I stopped just as I was coming out of the kitchen by the, we got a little island there. Stopped just as I was coming out and I started drinking. And it was like I was taken somewhere, like I was transported somewhere. And so when I was finished, I put the glass in the sink and I came and I sat down and he said to me, right? He said to me, he said, I have never seen anybody have an experience with juice like you just had. Because it was transcendental, y'all. Okay? So when we talk about appetite, right? Appetite has the sensory component and the enjoyment component to it. And those are all based up here. They're based on what it feels like, the crunch. Some people like crunch. Some people like soft. Some people like firm. Some people like kind of gritty feel. I love the burn behind the in the back of the tongue, or back of the mouth. So whatever it is, that influences what we eat. It influences how we eat. It influences how often we eat. But it has absolutely nothing to do with hunger, because hunger doesn't have those sensations associated with it. Okay? So influencers of appetite. Appetite is influenced by an internal signal like hormones, nutrients, and an external cue like the sight and the smell of food. Have you ever been kind of going along and you're really not thinking about food and you smell something and that something reminds you of someplace, and automatically your stomach starts to growl, your mouth starts to water, right? So those things are in the brain. They're being affected by that external stimuli. Hunger doesn't care whether you smelt it and you liked it. Hunger would say, I don't care, let's go get something to eat because we need the energy. Okay? So that is appetite. As we said, a basic physiologic need for food. That is what hunger is. And hunger is not based in our desire and our emotions necessarily. It is based on what the body needs. So just like we had a list for what appetite is, for hunger, when we think about hunger, hunger is driven by the need for energy and nutrients. So my body needs the energy. It needs the glucose. It needs those nutrients. It needs the iron. It needs the whatever it is, the calcium. It's associated with physical sensations such as stomach growling. So once again, and so because there's this overlap, sometimes people will hear or feel a particular thing and they think that they're hungry when it's actually their appetite. Okay? So it's associated with physical sensations such as stomach growling, weakness, lightheadedness, irritability. I think I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago that I was fasting, and one of my team members said I was more irritable. Right? It's regulated by interactions between the brain, the digestive system, and hormones. So when, let's go through that. So when food goes into the stomach stretches. When the stomach stretches, it sends a signal to the brain, right? Leptin is produced, and leptin says, hey, I'm full. Right? Because the body says it just needs enough, right? Because it's assuming that if I'm full, if my stomach is full, then I've put in enough food that I can get energy from. Sometimes that signal is disrupted because we put food in that has a lot of calories. Remember those calorie dense things? But it doesn't have a lot of nutrients. And so then we run into some issues. And so the primary influencers of hunger are biological responses to deficits in calories and nutrients. So when the amount of calories goes down and you need nutrients, the body says, hey, let's go eat. It doesn't care that Aunt Sue made her best apple pie or dressing, or that it's Christmas or it's your birthday. Hunger doesn't care about that. It just says, I need energy. Let's go find some energy. Okay. All right. So why is regulating appetite so challenging? And there are lots of reasons. We're going to run through these quickly. And like I said, we'll probably come back and do a part 2 of this. But number 1, hormonal and physiologic factors. Hormonal and physiologic factors. So hormones such as ghrelin, leptin, and insulin, like I just mentioned, and cortisol interact to control hunger and satiety. So when ghrelin is high, leptin is low, right? So ghrelin, growl, that's the hunger hormone, and leptin is the satiety hormone. So when ghrelin is low, that means that you're not hungry, and then leptin is usually up because leptin says I'm full, I'm not hungry, so my hunger hormone is down and my satiety hormone is up. Insulin, on the other hand, when I eat food, right, the body absorbs the food, and then over time, as the food is digested and absorbed, my blood sugar begins going down, and as the blood sugar goes down, that insulin level goes down as well. So insulin is the storage hormone. So insulin says, let's use, or let's store the energy. So insulin can also affect ghrelin and leptin. So when insulin is high, it makes you hungry. It stimulates ghrelin. So that's why when you have you ever had this happen to you? Right? I want you to think about this. So you're going along, you folks who are in our community who fasted, or even if you haven't fasted, you've just been doing something good. I mean, that day you decided I'm not going to eat, or you got busy and you didn't eat. And you didn't think about food, and then somebody gave you a piece of candy, they gave you a cookie, a cracker, some juice, and the moment that your body absorbs the energy or the sugar, the glucose, from whatever that thing you ate, all of a sudden you wanted more. Why is that the case? It's because the spike in blood sugar causes the insulin to come out. When the insulin comes out, it stimulates ghrelin, and you got hungrier. So all day, you didn't have anything, and so not an issue. But the moment we had a spike in blood sugar, insulin comes out, insulin makes us hungry. All right, see that cascade? And so when we talk about hunger, there are hormonal and physiologic factors that can influence it. Any disruption in these hormonal or physiologic factors can cause it to be challenging to manage and balance your appetite. And so here we're talking about ghrelin, leptin, insulin, and cortisol. Cortisol is the go find me energy hormone. So cortisol is part of that stress response. So when cortisol comes out, right, when you get stressed, cortisol comes out and epinephrine comes out. Cortisol's job is to go around the body and find energy in the form of sugar. And then epinephrine gets your body ready to use it. So the combination of them is what causes the issues that we see when it comes to appetite. Because here's this sugar and the body is now getting ready to use it, right? So those two things together can cause appetite stimulation. And then cortisol, I want you to think about and I read a book, I'm not sure, years ago, and it's called Why Do Zebras Not Have Ulcers? Why do zebras not get ulcers? And in the book, the author was saying, say you're a zebra and you're out and a lion starts chasing you, right? There are one of two outcomes of that. Either the lion catches you and you become lion food, or you get away, right? That's it. If the lion catches you, then there's nothing, you're not worried about anything, right? Because you're gone. If the lion doesn't catch you and you get away, as a zebra, you're not worried about anything either, because zebras don't like walk around saying, man, this is where that lion chased me yesterday. I wonder if he's still around. Maybe he's behind that rock. Zebras don't say that. So these zebras aren't worried. But as humans, guess what we would do? Tomorrow when we show up, we're like, man, isn't this the same place where the lion chased me? Well, this is where he got George last week, right? So all of a sudden we're doing that. And so in that process, the body is producing those hormones? Well, if you're the zebra and the lion didn't catch you, you got away. That means you expended enough energy to run faster than the lion. Okay, so that's what that means. You got away. Well, if I expended that much energy, what do I have to do to continue to survive? I've got to go back and get the energy. So cortisol, which got energy for us to use, epinephrine made the body able to use it. Once I've expended it, if I'm the zebra, then I've got to go back and I've got to replenish. So cortisol, elevated cortisol, makes you eat because it wants to replenish the food that you expended, the energy you expended when you were running from the lion. Well, we're not lions and we're not zebras, but because our cortisol level is elevated chronically, right? Some of us are always living in stress. We're always living in that edge. Because the cortisol levels are high, what do you think cortisol does in our body? Well, it also makes you eat. Because it is supposed to go help you replenish the food, replenish the energy, but you didn't expend any energy. Right? You're just sitting at the house, worried about your job. You're sitting at your job, worried about the family. You're sitting in church, worried about when you're getting out so you can go do something, right? So there are all these places where we find ourselves always in a tonic, stressful situation, and because the cortisol is up, the cortisol is pushing us, pushing our appetite. Okay? All right. So leptin, ghrelin, cortisol, insulin, we've talked about those. So hormonal and physiologic, right? So it's a complex interplay, complex interaction, all the hormones. And we just talked a little bit about that. So we get the high glycemic index foods, right? Because that's what we crave. We get those, we eat them, blood sugar goes up, and what happens? Insulin comes out. We also tend to eat low protein, we have a low intake of protein. So when we're stressed, nobody craves high protein. Everybody craves those not high quality foods that give us the big burst, right? So there's sensory specific satiety. So you go and you remember that chocolate bar that you had last time. And you eat the chocolate bar and temporarily you feel good. But then that wears away and now we've got to go get another chocolate bar. Your body composition also can influence hormones. So the larger you are, the more likely you are to have certain hormones that are elevated. For example, if you are a large person, you have insulin resistance, your insulin level is going to be higher. Person who tends to be overweight can have higher cortisol levels. Right? So your body composition, the body habitus, which is why we talk about the toned person, the person who is not necessarily in the gym, but they're toned, because those toned muscles burn calories, and they don't predispose us to having elevated cortisol and or insulin levels, right? So hormonal changes. So during puberty, during pregnancy, during menopause, all of those changes, hormones, will affect our appetite. And then, of course, hormonal imbalances, things like thyroid disease or adrenal insufficiency, or we just mentioned menopause is another one, okay, or pregnancy even, going back to that. So all of those changes that happen, those hormones are supposed to be doing a particular thing, but if that is dysregulated, now our appetite is stimulated. Gut health. There's such a big burst of conversation now about the gut and what the gut does and how it can help us. So if the gut is not healthy, then guess what? Right? We can have issues in terms of satiety. And then the sensory appeal of food. We just talked about that, right? It smells a certain way. And when it smells a certain way, the brain gets that and it stimulates the hormones that we are anticipating. right? It's kind of like, if you remember that experiment with Pavlov and the dogs. So he brings the food, he rings the bell. He brings the food, he rings the bell, and the dog eats the food. He brings the food, he rings the bell, the dog eats the food. He brings the food, he rings the bell, the dog eats the food. Then one day he doesn't bring food, but he rings the bell, and the dog salivates. Why does he salivate? Because the dog has gotten used to having food whenever they heard the bell. So the sensory, the hearing, or the smell for us, or the sight of something. You walk into someplace and you see, coming out of the kitchen, the steam as somebody's taking some out of the refrigerator, out of the oven. You haven't even smelled it. You haven't tasted it. You haven't touched it. You probably haven't seen it. But you're anticipating. All right, so that dopamine is going. The dopamine begins to pop up, and so we begin to anticipate, and so hormones begin or come into play. And then metabolic rate. So our metabolic rate, right? How much we burn. Like, some people who they look at a grape and they put on 20 pounds. And then some people, they eat, I don't know, they eat a boatload of food and nothing happens to them. They remain this big because their basal metabolic rate is different. And those are all regulated by hormones. And that all can have an impact on your appetite. And then there are emotional and psychological factors, okay? And we've talked about this, right? Because this is part of the heat model. So stress, boredom, sadness, other emotional states can lead to overeating and poor appetite control. That's why we go through the heat model, because the heat model says that those emotions, if we allow them to get too high, right? So don't get too happy, angry, lonely, tired, and all the other things. If we can let them get too high, they will plow through, they will crash through our thoughts, desires, and plans. So anxiety, fatigue, and even happiness, because it doesn't have to be, quote unquote, a negative emotion. It's just an emotion that we have not quite learned yet how to harness. That's why emotional intelligence is such a big thing. So emotions and psychological issues, right? So emotional eating, that's a big thing, big deal. I'll tell you, it's a big deal for me. So stress, tired, all of those, as a result of that, we eat. There's stress. There's emotions associated with other things that go on. So mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. People who are depressed and anxious, that will dysregulate their ability to suppress the appetite. So remember what we're talking about, right? So pillar number 2 is suppress the appetite. So all of these things are factors that influence the ability to suppress the appetite, whether it stimulates it or it dysregulates our ability. So we're talking about challenges. Why is it so difficult? Why is it so challenging to control the appetite? Emotional triggers. Once again, the heat model. Eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating. Right? So one of the things to be careful of for those of you who are in the community is the fasting, right? Because when we fast, there's this period of not eating, and so if we're not careful, then we begin binging after the fast. So binge eating. And then coping strategies. If we have not learned good coping strategies, then that can cause issues for us as well. So remember, we're talking about suppressing the appetite, pillar number 2, and these are things that are challenges, why it's challenging to be able to manage our appetite. And then environmental and social cues, right? So the food availability, marketing tactics, social norms, cultural practices, all of these contribute to how, remember, appetite is not a solely physiologic issue. It is not the body saying, I need the food. So the things that go into our brain, into our eyes, into our ears, things that we touch, how we feel influences appetite. And that's what this all is, right? So that You are with some friends, and this has happened to me just recently, right? We went out, and they said, "Oh, why don't you? This all right? Just eat, right? You can restart the fast tomorrow." Or you go to a function like I did last week, and the function is there and everybody's eating. Now I'm gonna have another thing tomorrow night, right? Where I'm going and everybody's gonna be eating, right? So if I'm not careful, right, if I've not made a decision about what I'm gonna do, then that can influence the ability for me to control, for me to address, for me to deal with my appetite, right? So, and then marketing. I was at a obesity conference. Listen to this one. I went to an obesity conference, and we're leaving, my wife and I, leaving the obesity conference. This was in Biloxi, Mississippi. And as we're leaving the conference, and we're driving across the bridge coming from Mississippi to Alabama, right off to the right, huge, big billboard, was a hamburger, fries, and a shake. And don't you know, I had already eaten. I wasn't hungry. But don't you know that got into my head? And we said, yeah, let's go ahead and let's stop. So marketing. It looks so nice, right? And remember, the point of marketing is to either make you think that you're better if you had that thing, that you are part of a group if you had that thing, or that you are missing out if you don't have that thing. So you're better if you got it. You're part of an exclusive group if you got it. And if you don't get it, you're missing out. That's marketing. And so that's what wants to happen. And then on top of that, think about the bliss point, where they put the combination of foods, combination of things together, just so that it has the right carbs and right sugar, right salt, right fat. So when it goes into your mouth, it's like, I can't just have one. Now there's a whole science behind that. Do you think that somebody's in the lab right now and just magically pick up and, okay, this thing tastes good and everybody starts liking it? No. They design, they engineer it, they send it out. They got taste testers. Hey, which one do you like? Is it too much salt? Is it too much sugar? Is it not enough fat? Right, and they send it out. And they bring it back and they redo the recipe and then send it out again. And some people like crunchy, so let's make it a little bit crunchier. Let's make it softer. Let's make it a little firm. Right? For all of those people who like crunch, if they send out something that's not crunchy, guess what? They're not getting those people. So you take that product, you bring it back, and you make it crunchy. Right? So marketing. So all those things will influence. And notice, these are influencing where? It's influencing the brain. It's not influencing your body's physiologic need for food. That's why marketing is so good, because marketing is changing the brain. And then, so environmental and social cues, food availability. So depending on where you live, certain things are there. Recently, I was at, so I've developed a like for some zero sugar Dr. Pepper, right? I'm not promoting it, but I've developed it. And so they have a couple of flavors that I like. And so recently they had a sale at one of the grocery stores. And I had somebody get me some of the Dr. Pepper. And I think, and I when I told him, I think it was buy two get three free. I would never have walked into the store and bought 5 cases of this zero Dr. Pepper. But they had the strawberry one, they had the cream soda one, I think they got a coconut one, they got a cherry one, but I would never have walked in and got it. But it's on sale, it's available. And so I call them up and say, hey, can you get me 5? As a matter of fact, I just finished the last one yesterday. The last can yesterday. All right, so marketing, food availability. When we talk about healthy foods, food deserts. If you don't have access to certain foods, you eat the food that's there, and the food that's there tend to be high carb, highly processed. And what that does is it stimulates it gets a spike in blood sugar. Blood sugar goes up, stimulates insulin. Insulin goes away, or insulin comes out, and then there it is. Okay. So access, peer pressure. We've talked about that before. Peer comparison. That's the marketing. Marketing says that I'm better if I have it. All right, I'm better than her if I have it. And I'm part of the group if I have it. Have you ever seen car commercials or go to car shows? Or actually lots of different things. You look in the magazines and there's this woman laying across the car. What does she have to do with a car? But it's you are better, right? You can be with this person. You can look like this if you have it. Right? That is marketing. Marketing. And then diet and nutrition. So your dietary habits will also play into your nutritional. Let me back up. Your dietary habits will play into how well you can control your appetite. Again, because the types of foods you eat, if you don't eat enough protein, if you eat the low quality food, if you eat foods that are full of carbs, if you eat food that is highly refined, then it's going to be a lot more challenging to suppress the appetite because your body is expecting that. You're getting the spikes. The hormones are flowing at that point. Right? So balanced, nutrient dense, portion controlled, and timing. Very important in how we are able to manage and how we're able to suppress the appetite. So lack of nutritional education is another place where people can fall down. Because if you don't know, if you don't understand, like we on the show, we've talked about retrogradation, and so many people have sent me messages or asked me in the office, hey, tell me about this retrogradation. Tell me about the ability to combine different foods. Tell me about the ability of the body to blunt the rise in blood sugar if I eat some fat paired with the carb. But if you don't know that, right, it's not something that's in your wheelhouse. High fiber. Right? So if you're not eating a lot of fiber, then it's going to be difficult to manage and to suppress the appetite. Right? We talked about protein intake. Artificial sweeteners. All right? That's one that I've got to put my hand up that I struggle with. So I drink things that have artificial sweeteners. And I can usually tell when I started drinking them. Or if I'm not drinking them, my wife can tell when I start drinking them again. Because guess what? I'm hungrier. Because they stimulate those same receptors. They stimulate the same hormones to come out. The cooking methods that we use, right? So we've talked at length about cooking, and when we cook things, and when we cook things, and when we process things, right? For instance, you take a fruit and you put it in a blender. You're making a smoothie. Great idea, except when you do that, you have just pulverized all the fiber that's in there. So when you eat that, the fiber is not there or is not sufficient enough so that all of the carbs that is in that juice goes into your body. So we get that big spike. Or we cook things and we cook them so much that we basically denature the proteins and denature the fiber. So when we eat it now, there is no fiber ability to help us with the blood sugar spikes. And so when we get the blood sugar spikes, insulin comes out, appetite gets stimulated. And when insulin comes out, insulin stimulates ghrelin. And then, of course, the taste of the food, right? So the taste of the food, and we just talked about that when we talked about the bliss point. And then, of course, convenience of foods, very important. Because if the food is just readily available, then guess what? That's what you're going to eat. And your ability to suppress the appetite, yeah, doesn't work. Okay. So that's nutrition. And then, of course, lifestyle and behavior habits. Your lifestyle choices and daily habits play a crucial role in the ability to regulate your appetite. Physical activity, sleep patterns, hydration, eating routines, all of those influence the body's signals. So if your body gets used to eating at noon, when noon comes, it's going to be looking for food, even if you're not hungry. Right, what you do. Oh, let's go to this next slide. We'll see. So if you're a shift worker, the time of day that you eat, the eating speed, how fast you eat, all of those things will influence how we're able to suppress the appetite. Right. So poor sleep quality. If we don't sleep, the body is stressed. If the body is stressed, guess what comes out? Cortisol. Right. So you got to be mindful of those things. Routine changes. So, everybody knows that if you're doing something, if you're on a routine and you break that routine, then it throws everything off. And then there are genetic and biologic issues. So genetics and biology can play a big role. The way we eat is determined by our family, right? Some people have a predisposition for certain foods, for certain flavors, for certain textures. Not because they learned it, but that's what the family does. A lot of it is learned, by the way. Let me say that. So a lot of it is learned, but there are some things that family predisposed. So genetic factors. So food addiction. So addiction, the addictive personality. Those can be genetic, right? And we'll probably come back and talk more. If you've not followed me on social media or seen it from my shows, where I talked about my food recovery program. I'm not talking about a program that I'm run as a food recovery. I'm talking about me being in a food recovery program, right? Because food addiction is a big thing, right? And then of course medical health and status. So some disease processes will make it challenging to manage appetite. So things like thyroid disease, hypothyroidism, or hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism makes you eat. Hypothyroidism, makes you eat too, but not as much. And so your weight goes up. You're sluggish. You don't feel like doing anything. And so what people do when they're in that situation, they eat. Obesity. Because of metabolic disease, there's dysregulation in the ghrelin and leptin. And so people during that process, right, they're already predisposed to have poor appetite control because their weight's gone up, and that weight causes insulin to come out. Insulin causes dysregulation of leptin in the brain. Does that make sense? I hope that does. All right. And then, y'all, so medical status, and we've talked about that. Diabetes, also chronic illnesses, obesity, your health beliefs, right? So families believe certain things. Those will influence. Dietary restrictions. If you have a disease process where you can't eat that much protein, then guess what? If you're not eating protein, most people will eat more carbs and fat. Okay, and then economic and accessibility. We talked a little bit about this. So if you are not able to afford certain things, then you eat what's available, and those things have a direct influence on what happens and what you do. Yep. And so economic factors like money, food security, food insecurity, economic constraints, transportation. So if you can't get there, guess what? That's it. And then, of course, food deserts. Food deserts. Okay, so like I said, guys, this is gonna have to be a part two, right? Because we're gonna talk a little bit about this model and talk a little bit about that. But we're gonna come back and do a deep dive into the things that we can do to begin now to work on suppressing appetite. So this was kind of understanding what are the things that cause it to be challenging for us to be able to manage our appetite. So what are those things? And so that's what we just went through. And like I said, we're going to need to come back and we're going to need to do more so that we can spend time talking about well, what are the things now that we understand, what are the things that we can do to be able to harness this, right? Because remember, we're talking about the 3 pillars. Pillar number 1 was suppress the decrease insulin. Number 2, suppress the appetite. And then number 3 is going to be, or is, I shouldn't say going to be, but is reduce sugar. And so what causes us to have difficulty with regulating appetite? And there they are, right? So hormonal and physiologic factors, emotional and psychological factors, environmental and social cues, diet and nutrition, lifestyle and behavior and habits, our genetics, medical and health status, and then our economics and availability of the things that we want to eat. That's it. That's it right there. And so we're going to come back and we're going to do a discussion on, okay, now what do we do? Now where do we go? Now that we understand how important appetite is, and is the place that most people will have challenges, what do we do with that? All right. And so let's see. We got, so Steve says he ended the fast at 4:30. Glucose was 119 and ketones 1.6. So let's hop over real quick and let's take a look at ketones for me. And remember, I'm 20 hours. So let's go ahead and turn on my Keto Mojo. And then I need let's see, where is that? I need this guy right here. And now we'll see that sync. What do you think my ketones are going to be? I'm thinking probably about 0.3, 0.4. But my blood sugars have still been in the hundreds, so maybe not. All right, because remember, 24 hours is when our ketone, where glycogen is gone. So let's see what that is. Okay, so 0.1. So 112 blood sugar. And then 0.1 and what my ketones are. So essentially low. So when we talk about ketones that are less than 0.5 considered normal, 0.5 to 1.5 considered nutritional ketosis, and then above 1.5 considered therapeutic ketosis. Okay? And we want and if you look at the graph, the tan line is the blood sugar and the turquoise line, those are ketones. So as I fasted there at the left of that graph, my blood sugar had gone down and my ketones went up. And then as I started eating, now the tan line, which is blood sugar, that went up and ketones went low. Because remember, ketones cannot exist with insulin. And as long as the blood sugar is up, insulin is out. And when insulin is out, then ketones go away. So we'll be interested to see what this does over the next 24 hours. Like I said, we have a function tomorrow. I haven't quite decided yet if I'm breaking the fast, but we will let you know as we get further into the week. We'll be doing a check-in, and next week, y'all. We're gonna be off hanging out with about, I think they said we're expecting 60 or 70,000 people at a camp. All right. So next week we won't have our live show, but we will have something for you. So tune in. And then we will be back live the following week, but we'll have some things for you. We'll talk more as we get into this week about what that will look like next week. And then on the 16th of next month, right, we're coming to the end of July. On the 16th of August is the anniversary of the channel, the 4-year anniversary of the channel. So on the 16th of August, you want to tune in because we're going to be doing a 24-hour live, or 24-hour stream. I said live stream. We're going to be doing a 24-hour stream. And you want to be part of that. We've got some folks who are going to send us some messages. We'll talk, and you'll get more information about what that will look like for that day. All right. So all that we do is with the intention of reversing diabetes and to make you healthier. And so I want to let you know that you have unlimited potential. You have unlimited ability to be able to harness that potential. And we harness it with education, empowerment, and encouragement. Here on the channel, that's what we do. That's the Triple E formula for success. And we educate with the shows that we do, the podcasts, the blogs. We empower with the tools that we teach, right? All those skills that we're learning to put that into practice. And then we encourage with the community that you are a part of, the community that you are helping to build. Our call to action to you is this. Join the challenges. Every month we have a channel. So come on, go back and watch those. We go over those. In fact, we posted some of the highlights today on the channel. Go back and watch that. You'll see the platform that we're using. Join those. Those are the ability for you to be able to put into practice the things that we learn. We empower with the tools, right? The tools that we're learning, emotional intelligence, the HEAT model, how to put together a meal, how to look at your medication, how to exercise, the benefit of exercise. Today we're talking about the pillar number 2 of the 3 pillars of reversing diabetes. All those are tools that you can use to be able to reverse diabetes. And then invite a friend. Don't keep this to yourself. Invite someone to come alongside with us as we move through the process. As always, I am excited to be here, and I always say that this is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Let me do that again. This is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, new year, new you. Good night, everyone. We'll see you at a check-in later this week. We'll see you Sunday morning for this week in review. And then next week, pay attention. Come on to the channel. We'll have a special show for you as we are out hanging out with some kids camping, but not forgetting about you here. But thank you for coming through. Have a good night, everybody. Good night.